Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Aaron Presley. Welcome to the Haas Pod. Welcome to Wrestling's Greatest Podcast. I'm here tonight, joined, as always, by SuperTex Brent McKenzie. Brent, how you doing?
Doing great, Aaron. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. I'm on the road. I'm at my parents' house, sitting in the garage. I'm all the jokes you can make at one point, but I'm right here to talk about some professional wrestling.
So are we gonna call you Tim Taylor tonight? Is that what's going on? Is it tool time over there at Aaron Presley's house?
Well, is he Tool Man or is he the other guy?
Are you Wilson?
He was Wilson when the screen was dark.
Fence right here in front of you. You can't see your face. No, I'm doing good, Aaron.
I'm here. Oh, sometimes it's life. It's life.
Why Bam Bam Bigelow and MVP make fun of each other down there. Let me introduce myself. I'm Charlie Haas, owner of the Haas Pod.
Oh, we got shirtless Charlie Haas. He's showing off the body, everybody.
Our guest today.
Yeah,
Charlie, how's it going, bud?
Hold on. No, it's going good. It's going good. You can tell we're just having fun tonight. We're just having a good old time, and man, I'm excited about tonight. I really am. We're going to go into this is one of the times where we can introduce, and we get to know, and we get to see how wrestling is run from a promoter side. So I'm talking about Mr. Bostic. Jerry Bostic is going to be here, and he is going to take us on a ride on how he went from a wrestler into a promoter, and how he has taken world-class pro wrestling and is making it mainstream and bringing in all types of talent, but how he's making it stay relevant. And that's the key today. How do promoters have a pulse on the wrestling business, and how do they know which way to go so they stay relevant and they keep going? So, Jerry, glad to have you. And guys, it's good to be back, seeing you guys again.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Yes, sir. So, Jerry, okay, when did you start wrestling? Because you were a wrestler, correct, before you went into promoting?
Actually, I made my wrestling and promoting debut at the same time. I started training for wrestling in 2005. I got into it with one of my best friends. We both loved wrestling, and one day we were at work, and I was like, yeah, we should be wrestlers. And he's like, how are we going to do that? And I was like, I don't know, man. Let's look it up on the internet. And keep in mind, that's 2005, so obviously the internet was in a different place back then, and we drove to Oklahoma City every week for a year. And from there, we had our debut show in 2006 in Ardmore, Oklahoma. It was a massive disaster. And from there, we kind of went back to running small shows for a long time until I started World Class, formerly known as IWR, in 2016. And in the last 5 years, it's just really, God has been very good to me when it comes to wrestling. I've accomplished more than I thought possible. And, I'm not even sure that I've had my best days yet. I think a lot of, the stuff that I went through previously was to prepare me for what's yet to come.
Yeah. No, I think I have a similar story with that now. It's you're right. I mean, I thought I was done with the wrestling business. It's all public. The divorce was really bad. But it's like I don't know. In my case, I put God in my life, and and I got my kids back. I got my life back, and wrestling came back. And it was something I was not expecting to do. And I'm not here preaching. For me, it worked. And that's where I'm at today. So, and I would never have thought of been starting a podcast. And Brent, I've known for a long time. And Aaron, I met through SWE. And we clicked right off the bat. And we always heard of each other, but just ran and saw each other, but never worked together. And it's weird how God puts people in their lives. And now I'm going to be working for you, Jerry. So I'm excited about that as well. So I'm excited.
Likewise. And, I think that wrestling is very easy to worship as a false idol. If you don't watch it, wrestling will take over your life, and you'll forget about, your kids, your family, the things that really matter. And I think you have to have that happy balance between all of it. And it's not always easy to find that. It's I find myself constantly, you have to check wrestling, because if you don't watch it, you can be on the phone all day, or you can be immersed in this world all day long and totally forget about the rest of the world. And, you know, I think a lot of us probably go through that in the wrestling business because it's something about, I played every sport possible, but it doesn't matter if you wrestle in front of 20 people or thousands. There's nothing like it. There's no feeling like it. You're literally holding people's emotions in the palm of your hand.
Yeah, it's the oldest sport to man. I mean, it's one of the oldest sports in the Olympics, the Olympiads. But wrestling is, it's one of the it's the oldest sport known to man. Also, and a lot of times, people are given a character, and they start to believe that in that character, and it's working on TV, and all of a sudden that character takes over them, and that's not the person you knew when they started. But sometimes when that person they become is not the person at all that started.
I think most people, you get into wrestling because you love it.
Yeah.
But as time carries on, oftentimes, you start getting this taste of fame, whatever level of fame it may be. And you forget that, you become a different person than you were when you first got into wrestling. And, so I think, you have to always keep that in the back of your mind too, that, you need to remember why you got into it, why you loved it, treat other people the way you'd want to be treated. And remember that at the end of the day, it is just wrestling.
Yep. So Jerry, you said you got started in 05, 06, somewhere around there. Who was it that you went to learn the ropes, take your bumps? Who trained you?
Al Farad trained me actually, who's still with me today. And Travis, Kareem Sadat's his wrestling name. He assisted Al, and then a girl named Dana. We would, first we went to a place called Sooner. I think it was Sooner Championship Wrestling. I can't remember. I think I'm forgetting one of the words. But we went there for a while, and then we ended up training the last back half of it in Dana's backyard. So I mean, it was a classic wrestling tale,
So how long did you train before you actually had your first match? And how
About
many
a
people?
year.
How many people were in the crowd?
There was around 500, but it was still a massive failure.
So what
and at the time, at the time when I made my debut, I didn't have wrestling gear. I was one of those guys. I had a pair of Jordans and some gym shorts. I was in decent shape, but it was funny because my shoe came off in the middle of the match, and I was wrestling my friend I was talking about earlier, D Money, and I remember I hit him with the shoe. It was just like a knee-jerk reaction, and lo and behold, he took it like a brick, and he's laying on the ground. I'm like, oh shit, is he okay?
Loaded Jordan.
Oh yeah, I mean that must have been what it was. In fact, that is what it was. It was a loaded Jordan. Thanks for the assist on that, Brent. And so I can look back on it fondly now, but I remember thinking like, if you had all these people on this card, people would magically know, and lo and behold, they didn't magically know.
Brent, who broke you in? Who broke you in, Brent?
Man, I got started with Ryan Genesis.
Okay, I know Ryan very well. Very good guy.
You've had several matches with Ryan.
Aaron, who broke you in? Aaron, who broke you in the business?
Yo.
Yeah, who broke you in?
I started with Killer Brooks.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, I was broken in by Iron Mike Sharp, Canada's greatest athlete. So
Iron Mike Sharp, yes.
Well, I got out of college. It was out in New Jersey, and ECW, the House of Hardcore. I went down there to go. My brother and I drove up down to Long Island. We went in there, and there's a Saturn, Cronus, and Taz, and it was like $3,500. I'm like, man, I'm like, well, I graduate at the end of May, then we'll be back. But then I called and I said, look, I don't have the $3,500. And Cronus goes, well, then you're not wrestling, kid. And he hung up. And so then I was bouncing, and then Devin Storm, Ace Starling. They were at this. They were big names on the indies. They were working they were bouncing at a bar I was bouncing at. Told me to go down and check out Iron Mike Sharp's school in Asbury Park. It was $100 down, $20 a week. Went on for 10 months, and that's where we went. So yeah. Little did I know when I met Taz later, he goes, Charlie, I always wanted you and your brother because I heard of you and I saw you guys grow in the sport. He goes, but you didn't have to pay the $3,500. You could have been 1,000 down or 500. We would have done payment plans. So but I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Cronus, was the one I talked to. So, but that's the way it went. So yeah. So we all are different stories to get there, but we're here. And the thing is, you know what? We are fans, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're a mark." Well, I think we're all marks to get into the business.
Amen. So. Amen. I love that whenever people are like, "Oh, he's just a mark."
You're
like,
right. I am.
Newsflash: most of us that are in wrestling is because we love it. Most of us are marks. Now, you can be a mark to a healthy or unhealthy degree, I suppose, but we're all marks in our own.
And when I go to train people, I would rather them be a fan and know the moves than having to teach someone. It'd be like me going into a MMA and I don't know the names of the holds or anything, or much of the holds. I'm not to take people down, but but I'm like, you have to be a fan if you want to be a wrestler. I think that way it's like you visualize what you see on TV and you want to apply it. I mean, it's easier to train someone like that. So, but
that's true. I'd gone to a TNA show, and I guess it was probably 2009, and I happened to see Earl Hebner outside, and I was like, hey, Mr. Hebner, I said, do you mind if I get a photo with you? And he was like, no problem. So I took the picture with him. I said, sorry, man, I feel like a mark doing this. He says, and I told him, I was a wrestler. And he said, man, don't worry about that. He said, we're all marks. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And I was like, mind blown when he said that.
If you think about it, all the stuff you go through along the journey, starting off, getting to where you want to go, every step of it, if you didn't love it, you definitely wouldn't do it.
Right.
No, you're right. You're right, man, because, I've seen it'll take from you. It'll get back. It'll take. It'll get back. Sometimes, it takes, I don't know how many deaths or how many funerals I've been to, I can't blame it on the sport. Can't blame it at all. It's, or the injuries, I guess, it's just, it'll take and take, man. Like you said, so you got to really keep it at, arm's distance and, just know that, it can take from you as well. But I know who you are, and you got to have a good support system, good friends too. I think if you stay in a good group of people that are within the sport, I think you'll be all right. It's just you get in that bad crowd and go down fast. And for some reason, sometimes the bad crowd is what's on top, and it can be dangerous. So
I think that's interesting you said that. I think wrestling really is about, a big part of it is about the crowd you run with. I think that's a very good point you made, because if you get in with the bad crowd, there's no telling really what you're going to find yourself into, whether it be just hell, you could even lose your life running with the wrong crowd.
Yeah. It's I know one time when I was breaking into WWE, I was like, and Umaga Eki was my best friend, and he was explaining to me about, okay, you have the Samoans, their family, which is like, let's face it, they're like the mafia of wrestling. They are. They are. They control it. Starting going back from Peter Maivia to Afasika, to then you got Yoko and then Samu and Appa and Rikishi and Tonga and Meki. Just on and on. And to Roman Reigns, he's in Jonathan and Jay. So but he was at the WWE back in the 80s. They had the BSK clique, which was Bones, Skull, something. And it was Taker, Rikishi. What's the guy? The guy that did the naked guy all the time.
Midian.
Yeah. And then there was a tight crew, and then you had the clique that was their own crew, and then then the Hearts had their own crew, their own crew. Harvard, Brett had his guys going, but he said it was very cliquish, man. It was right there. It was like sometimes they wouldn't even they would just stay in their clique and go do business, and that's it.
So Charlie, whenever you were growing up and you loved wrestling, who did you look up to?
Man, so I was first thing I saw was Snuka getting pile driven by Ray Stevens. I'm like, that's great blood, fucking juice. And then I saw Rocky Johnson and Tony Atlas when beat the Samoans with that brutal chair shot that if you go back and watch it now, it's like he barely touches them. But back then people believed it was nuts.
Oh yeah.
I remember standing up when Sergeant Slaughter hated him, but the Iron Sheik got in front of him and he stepped the other way and the Iron Sheik stepped that way. And it was like, and that was right when we talked about time. America, we were hostages or in Iran. And this son of a bitch is like, he's doing the clubs. He's like, I ran number one, America. And then all of a sudden, man, Slaughter goes, I'm not going to have you put down my country because I pledge allegiance to the flag. And I mean, I got up and I was like, holy shaking. I mean, it gave me goosebumps. I mean, the whole crowd was saying the Pledge of Allegiance, man. It was awesome, man. And, but then, that was when I got hooked there. But when I really got hooked is when cable came out. And, man, I was more 605 and 805 Gordon Sully. I don't know if it was the voice of Gordon or if it was like that small studio. And it was just, Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson. And that's when I decided that's what I wanted to do.
That's wild because, honestly, I think I was more of a WCW person. I got into it because of WWF at the time. I mean, I remember flipping through the channels and I saw Hogan and it was like game over. After that, I was hooked. I loved Hogan, loved Sting. I loved Luger. Later on, Bret Hart. But I remember, one time Earthquake attacked Hulk Hogan, and I guess Hogan was going to make a movie or some shit. But I'm young at the time, and I don't realize that. And Earthquake's jumping on him, and I'm sitting in front of the TV like, "Get up, Hulk!" Like I remember crying. I was crying watching this, and I think that kind of emotion is like you said about the Slaughter thing. I think that kind of emotion is gone from wrestling, and that's what needs to come back.
It needs to. I mean, you believe. I mean, I remember when Hogan was like when Flair showed up with the title, and it was like, the big man, what's rumbling in your stomach? That's butterflies. So seeing the Nature Boy, and he gave that whole speech, and you go back, and you're like, I was like, oh man, Ric Flair is Hulk Hogan. I was like, oh my, I was so afraid Hogan was going to lose the title and Flair was going to be the real world champion. I was like, man, but I mean. I know.
I didn't realize until I got older about Flair. I remember like growing up hating him. I hated him, like with the passion. Yeah. And then when whenever you get older and you realize, what's going on, you're like, damn, man, Ric Flair was really good at his job.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I tell I tell a lot of the kids that are working these smart venues. I know Robert Langdon. We know he has Texoma Pro, and it's a small venue, but there's like 100 people at the most, or that's what they can fit in there. And I tell the people, I go down there and learn your craft. I go, get out on the floor, throw your punch, your kick. I go, because if they believe and you're that close, then everyone else will believe. But you got to learn how to throw a punch. You got to learn you got to know how to connect. And that's why I relate to WCW or back with the TBS days. It's that studio was 60 people, man. But when Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, when they beat up the Rock and Roll Express, or when they were beating up Chick Donovan, or whoever it was that was out there, I mean, but then they told you what they were going to do. Their stuff looked real on TV right there in the studio, and then the way they talked is the way they wrestled. They put 60,000 people or 10,000, 15,000 people in the Omni or in Johnson City, Tennessee, or down in the Spectrum. I mean, dude, and that's what I loved, is that it was believable. I mean, I was scared to death, man. I thought the Russians were really taking over when they brought in. You had Nikita, you had Crusher Khrushchev, and then you brought in, Nikita, and you had Volkov, and I was like, man, they're really taking over there. And then, Gordon Sully was like, I don't know what's going to happen. They're taking over the world. They're winning the Cold War, and they're taking over pro wrestling. And I was upset. I was like, oh my God,
we're going to be done. But I used to always love that wrestling would intertwine real life into its programming. And even that, for the most part, is absent in today's programs.
And I think that if they can capture that,
with all of the stuff going on in the world today would be the perfect time to rechannel your stories into what's going on in the world.
And that's what and I think when I went back to wrestling, and thank God for Aaron, he was like, this is what we need to do, and this is what you have to do, and he would tell me what to to say, or in my own way. He would just give me the bullet points, and I was like, I'm going to be me for this time. I'm going to be Charlie Haas, and that's it. I'm not going to be a character. I can't be someone that I'm not if I don't feel comfortable. And I can't memorize something. This is how you have to deliver it. You have to put emphasis on that. I'm like, man, I know what to say. Just tell me what the bullet points, will get there, and it worked that way. And but then I started bringing things into it, like, man, you always hear the word privilege. I'm like, man, I'm going to start a group called The Privilege. And I'm just going to make fun of them, because instead of being the whites, it's going to be white, black, Hispanic, and Polynesian. And it's going to be multicultural. And we are the privilege. I mean, so, I was trying to take stuff like that and go with that. And it seemed to work, but you're right. If people would just not really try to, reinvent the wheel and just go with what got us here, you know, we'd be successful. You know, like tag team wrestling, we can bring that back.
You know, it's like they say, you know, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Exactly.
And, you know, wrestling really wasn't broken, but somebody fixed it. And I'm not sure they fixed it properly. I don't think they were reading the instruction manual whenever they were fixing it.
Right. Or somebody, you know, somebody thinks that they invented it. And so what he says is going to go. But, you know, but fans can only take so much of it. I think they're starting to speak up on that. And that's why I'm like, now look where we're at, internet TV. I never thought, you know, I couldn't believe it. I remember having 3 channels and then UHF. So we went from that to cable down to internet TV. I mean, now everyone can have a wrestling show on TV. I mean, I saw OVW has their own station now on Roku. I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know Al Snow owned it. I was like, unbelievable. So it's good.
Man, it really is crazy, all the different forms of all the different ways you can watch wrestling, all like how much wrestling programming is on now. And yeah, you know, I remember back the UHF, you know, the UHF days too, and then TENA days, you know, like whenever you turn it to the certain channels and the screen is all staticky and you're just sitting there waiting for the screen to straighten up, you know.
You saw like movies, like something like that, naked girls, yeah. They did that. They had that one there. It was like at midnight. You could watch some, I don't know, some kind of negative show would be on there. A bad show that my mom would get mad at, I'm sure.
Yeah. Then when the screen got right, you were like, yes.
Yeah, I was on UHF. And I'd have my brother messing with the antenna, and I'm like, you at 1312. I see it. Yes, I think you see it. Yeah. And then it was like live at the Sportatorium. It's dun 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 dun. I mean, I loved it, man. The Von Erichs.
I used to watch a lot of pay-per-views like that. I would just put them on the channel and just wait for it to hopefully clear up, you know. But nonetheless, I'd listen to it.
Yeah, and I just visualize. But yeah, then the Sportatorium, man, and I think that's when the Von Erichs. I mean, you couldn't get any. I've never seen anything, and I go back and watch it now. They didn't have the security railing, and once those Von Erichs got heat, you got heat on them. Man, people were, I mean, even if it was just a slight heat, people were hitting the ring. I mean, they were pissed. Like, you could not touch those boys. It was like, you know, I was living in Oklahoma growing up. I never went down to the Sportatorium. Did you guys have any experience as fans? Did you guys get to go there?
I never got to go.
You know, funny story. Have you ever been, Aaron?
Aaron?
No, I never went, but that I heard all about them. Growing up through my family and whatnot, I even had a Dingo Warrior 8x10 that my aunt brought to me. Yeah, she saw him in like Rogers, Texas, and I remember as a kid I had no idea that the Dingo Warrior was the Ultimate Warrior, so I had a Dingo Warrior 8x10 just shoved away. Some
who was he
guy.
before that?
Nobody.
Who was he before that? Can you tell me that? Because
He's Blade Runner.
He was Blade Runner.
Rock and Sting, the Blade Runners.
Yeah.
We call it Mid-South Wrestling. Yeah.
You know, that was such a truly magical time, the whole world-class era. You know, people don't realize all of the amazing things world-class did for pro wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, they were the first people to mic the ring. They were the first people to use multiple camera angles.
Yeah, the 3-camera shot.
Yeah, they were first company to produce modern day vignettes.
Yeah.
I mean, so many different things. You know, they were so far ahead of their time, and people don't realize that. You know, after David passed away, and they did the Cotton Bowl show or the Dallas Stadium show, Texas Stadium show. At the time, that held like the event, the attendance record. You know, they were neck and neck with WWE at one point. And you know, if you know, it's been talked about all the time. If Fritz would have decided to leave the territories and take the promotion national, you know, we might be looking at a different wrestling landscape. You know, I think the Von Erichs, I mean, I see it obviously still whenever they work our shows. You know, you believe almost in the Von Erichs, to me, they were that family that you wish your family was, you know. And I think that was a big selling point to the people back then, was they were the all-American family. You know, there wasn't a lot of all-American families in wrestling like that. And they were larger in life in our area.
Yeah, I mean, and they came out, when they got on TV, they're like, oh, right out of high school. And I'm like, man, he's out of high school. He looks like a Greek god. I'm like, I got a chicken chest. This dude's got a chest. I'm like, man, I'm never gonna be like that. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean, no, they wrestled, and I was like, and I think they went to Denton Ryan, and Denton was huge. Everyone knew who Denton Ryan was. It was like Allen was now. And I mean, you hear the stories where like Kerry, they'd be like, we have no money. They're at the mall, and Kerry's like, no, that's no problem. He'd get on the mic and say, hey, the Von Erichs are taking Polaroid pictures down at the food court. Man, they charge like $25 a Polaroid. They walk out with like thousands of dollars. It's ridiculous.
To me, Kerry was always my favorite for that reason that you just brought up. I mean, he looked like what a pro wrestler should be. I always think of like him and Lex Luger.
Yeah.
And Kerry, I don't know, he just had so much charisma. He was, to me, Kerry was amazing.
Yeah. And,
Jerry, so with your company, it used to be IWR, it was Imperial Wrestling Revolution, and then it transitioned into World Class. How did it go from IWR to World Class?
Actually, Jim Ross, he used to make fun of IWR all the time, and he would do it publicly on his podcast. He'd do it privately to my face. He'd talk about how long the name was. And, originally, whenever we came up with the name, I just wanted something different. I was never thinking like how long this name was or anything like that. I remember he was plugging one of the shows on his podcast one day, and he's like, yeah, get your hands rested. And then whenever you're done, go to imperialwrestlingrevolution.com because it's a hell of a lot to type and you might not even be able to spell it. I was like, damn.
I remember hearing that on his podcast thinking, man, he's burying Jerry right now.
Yeah. While putting me over.
And then how'd you meet JR? He's the one that recruited me into WWE. We're Okies. So I'm an Okie. I'm from Edmonds. So.
He did so much for me. I'll always be grateful to JR. And then, I remember we decided to change the name ultimately because we got a call about getting our first TV deal. And at the time, it was NBC in Missouri. And the guy was like, yeah, we had a wrestling show. They went out of business. We want to replace it with yours. We saw it on the internet. We were referred to you. And I was like, well, thanks, but we don't have a TV show. What you saw was just some matches. And he's like, well, it's like every Saturday on NBC following Saturday Night Live. And I was like, well, take it. And then he was like, well, when can you get it to me? And I'm like, well, now we're back to the problem that I don't have one. And so, I took like a month to watch a lot of movies, a lot of videos and read a lot of stuff. And I went and sat with JR, I don't know how many times, with my little notepad and just wrote why he talked. And that's when we decided to change the name. And it was actually Marshall Von Erich who came up with the idea of changing it. And, at first I was like, oh, man, we can't do that, man. You got to talk to your dad. We can't be doing that. And, Kevin gave his blessing. And then, we actually we almost changed it to World Class Championship Wrestling. At that time, there was no trademark. The trademark was not owned by anybody at that time. Oddly enough, at that time, Vince didn't even own the WCW trademark. But, there's a thing that WWE has used on multiple people. It's called common law trademark. And what that is
there such a thing?
They don't own it. But since they've shown it on the network, they can call confusion in the marketplace. That's what it's called. And Joey Styles told me about this. What it is because they've showed it on there, they can say, well, this is confusing our audience because we're showing this programming and now you're trying to come in and use it. And so we did it first. And so by doing so, that enables them to squash out the little people. And I remember going to WrestleCon that year. Eric Bischoff's worked with me a couple of times and has helped me out numerous times. Eric Bischoff will vouch for me to anybody. And I'm always appreciative of that. And so I saw him, I was like, hey, Eric, do you have a couple minutes? And he's like, yeah. I was like, well, I want to show you something. And so I showed him the trademarks and I told him what was going on. And he's like, I know why you'd want to ask me. I was like, well, of course, you're the king of getting sued by them. And he's like, Jerry, he goes, everything you've shown me, you're right. He was like, but he goes, you can't beat them. He said, even if you file that trademark, they're gonna stop you. They will tie you up in court and you don't have the money to fight them. And that's the truth. They'll do that to anybody in our industry.
Yeah, just to change a venue, you end up in Stamford, Connecticut. And there's no way you're going to win there. No way.
No, not even. And, you know, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame actually tried to, the one at Wichita Falls, they actually tried to trademark the world-class merchandise, you know, the logos for merchandising. And WWE, sure enough, stepped in and blocked it, tied them up in court. They don't have the money to fight them either. So you just can't do it. So ultimately, that's why we went with World-Class Revolution, also known as World-Class Pro Wrestling, is, you know, honestly, like it just isn't worth all the hassle behind it.
Well, and I heard, you know, I thought Peacock bought the library or WWE Universe. They only licensed it. Vince,
yes, they do not own it. They just licensed it.
And they're going to license it for $4 billion for like, I think for 5 years or something. I mean, that's
you know, that's what we ultimately did with our back catalog. We had a new streaming service called SeatGeek TV reach out, and they wanted to purchase our content. And I told them, like, no, you know, I'm not selling it to you, but I'll license it to you on a non-exclusive agreement. And, you know, obviously I didn't get that. I told them, I was like, you know, my library is worth as much as what WWE got from the Peacock, right? But they didn't believe me for some reason.
I hear
maybe it was sentimental value.
I hear the missing library that everyone's looking for is the Portland Championship Wrestling. They're like, I mean, they said most likely it's been destroyed or recorded over. You know, because I know down in Memphis they would always record over those tapes, use the same tapes. Now they didn't think it was going to be something special like it is. But yeah, they said Portland Championships is the whole.
There's a couple of holdouts. You know, Lawler owns the CWF footage, which, you know, it's very odd that it's not on the network, considering he has a good relationship with them. And there's also Mario Civaldi owns a handful of tape libraries still. He owns
Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor is asking a crazy.
Yeah, Ring of Honor now has theirs out too. Mario Civaldi owns the tail end of World Class, the International World Class, a lot of the Stone Cold matches, early days, Mark Calloway. I think he owns the GWF tape library. Mario Civaldi has a pretty good collection of the tape library.
Who owns the Bosch library, the Houston Wrestling?
Yeah, who owns I think Vince.
I thought Bruce Tharp owned it at one point, but I think he sold it to Billy Corgan.
Did he sell it to Corgan?
Oh, Corgan's got Bosch's library?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, I know it's been sold.
Yeah, because whenever I had conversations with Bruce, I had actually inquired about the library, and I think he told me that he sold it as a part of the deal to Billy.
Man, you know what? I never got a chance. I mean, this is before my time, though. Really, I never got a chance to see Houston. You know, Paul Bott. What was it called? Just Houston Wrestling.
Houston Wrestling. Yeah.
They say to this day he was the best promoter when it came to pay. He always
best payout guy.
Yeah. Even Jerry Briscoe will tell you that. Best.
And they obviously didn't know me. Just kidding.
Jerry, we've got to talk about a match I did for you a few years back. Then if that's the case.
Who was the guy that ran out on me when I was in the main event? And they're like, Jackie comes around the ring. The guy left. He left his pregnant wife behind, but he took all the money. And who was the guy? It was
Ronnie Gossett.
Yeah, Ronnie Gossett. That piece of shit.
Yeah, UCW.
$1,000, Ronnie. Dude, I mean, I'm like unbelievable. I mean, I'm in the middle. I didn't finish the match. This guy said, "Sorry, guys, I got to leave," and then we left. I was like, I was pissed.
Well, that happened a couple of times with Gossett, man. Once out there in Paris, and then Belton.
Yeah, that's what happened in Paris. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
You should have been You should have been at that Mesquite Rodeo show.
So, the Mesquite Rodeo show, we actually ran 360 the same night, and I'd asked a couple of guys who we tried to book. And they were like, "Oh, we're doing the Mesquite show." And I was like, "Yeah, sure you don't want to come to my show? Make sure you get paid." And they were like, "Oh, no, they're going to."
On 360. I heard he's a kind of a jackass.
There's a couple of jackasses that ran that one.
They never booked me, so I was like, fuck them. So.
We totally booked you, Charlie. I just don't think you remember.
You never booked me for 360. You never booked me for 360. Never, man. I remember that. Because I never met Aaron.
You met Aaron. It was 2014. We had you come in. You wrestled Carson at the Expo Center.
All right. But I thought that was BOW part of
No,
BOW.
man, that was 360.
Okay. I don't know. I mean,
Tomato.
It's been a while. It's been a while. I forget stuff
Aaron,
too.
did I meet you? Did I really meet you, or was Aaron? Was he just a fan in the crowd?
No, Aaron was.
No, I was there. No, I ran the company.
Oh.
You know, I remember going to that.
Charlie.
I swear to God, man, I don't remember. I remember meeting Aaron. It must have been skinny Aaron. I don't know.
It was skinny. Yeah, it was skinny Aaron with no beard.
Hair. He had hair.
I had hair.
Damn, you went a
no tools.
Total life transformation.
Total life transformation.
Well, I know I've worked for Jerry Bostic before, so this will be the first time. So
I've worked for Jerry before. I worked for him. I got to wrestle the Von Erich boys in a tag match with a tag partner I won't mention, but it was a fun time. We wrestled over at the Ridgely Theater, and then it was that 3-day weekend that World Class did in the DFW. I think you did Fort Worth and then Arlington, and then you finished up at Gas Monkey.
Thanks for reminding me. I tried to fucking forget.
I remember that going on.
No, you know, I mean, it wasn't bad. You live and you learn.
Like I was watching, I got this notification. Like turn it to YouTube right now. Charlie Haas, Shelton Benjamin confronts Charlie Haas in front of the Cornet on the IHWA, and I'm like IHWE, and I'm like, oh, Dave Fuller's okay. But I forgot that they had Shelton, the surprise guest. Like I walked through the curtain and Shelton's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "What the fuck?" He goes, "Keep walking," and they turn it right around, and I walked right back out with him. Like, and then all of a sudden he starts punching me. And I'm like, I forgot all about that whole thing. I'm like, holy shit.
I like David. He's a nice guy. He's a character.
Yeah. All right. Is he running again? Are they going to run or no? Is he done?
Yeah, he's doing something. I think he's running WrestleMania weekend again.
I'm going to keep my thoughts to myself.
Pour me a beer over here.
In fact, Jerry, whenever you worked for me, Brent, it was in David's venue.
It was in David's venue, and that was one of the reasons I was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, I'll work there." Come on.
As a promoter, man,
but you remember that night? It was like some of the worst weather I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, it was raining cats and dogs, man. The whole back lot was flooded. It was just a nightmare. Man. And then by the time the show was over, it had stopped raining.
Yeah, I think that's the worst attendance we've ever had on any show. And I remember Chavo's plane was like circling in the air, and he ended up having to land in I don't even think it was Dallas. I can't remember where it was. And then somebody had to drive him there. And he was like mad at first because that was before we became good friends. I'm like, "What are you mad for, bro? I don't control the weather. It's not like I'm not like Cobra Commander sitting here with the weather dominator." Like,
and that, man, that's crazy. That was a pretty star-studded show. You had Victoria, you had Duggan, MVP was there, Chavo, you had the Von Erichs. It was just crazy that the attendance was so low. But then, with as bad as that weather was, I don't blame anybody for not getting out in it because it was.
I didn't either.
It was.
You couldn't even be upset over it. You know what I mean? I mean, you want your shows to do good and you want people to come, but at the same time, I would never wish my shows to do well and put people in harm's way. You know what I mean?
But man,
no wrestling show's ever worth that.
It was a fun show, regardless.
It was a good show.
All right.
I've always said my shows are never the problem. They're always usually pretty good. It's always my half-ass marketing.
Here's what I want to ask you, Jerry. I love the wrestling business, and I want to get lately, when I always want to go talk to the camera guys. So I always try to work with them on where I'm going to be and where they are and my experiences. Ask them if they've ever shot wrestling before. I think that's the most important thing. I look to talk to the music guy, the sound guy, the lighting guy. I like to see where the hard camera is and see, if it's across from the entrance, because if it is, that's really a no-no, because what my experience was that hard cameras got you coming out of the ramp, but the rope's cutting your head off or your eyes, there's a lot of ins and outs. But what I want to know when I started this is getting to know the promoters. How do you determine which way your promotion is going to go and that you need to stay relevant or you need to stay ahead of the curve. And do you let WWE or AEW dictate the way you're going to run yours? And most importantly, and I've seen this happen a lot, how do you keep from drying up? I mean, how do you keep from losing all your money? Like, and what is the best strategy in making a show and staying in the positive instead of the black? I mean, the red, staying out of the red and in the black.
Well, I would love to say I'm a wizard at it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but I'm no Harry Potter.
You're still running, so yeah, you're doing something.
I think in this area, I probably, since the Von Erichs, I probably produced some of the largest gates. But on the flip side of it, it's like, what me and Brent just talked about. On the flip side, you have those bad shows too. And you have to have that healthy balance. If you want to grow and expand, you have to be able to take some hits, because whenever you go to these new markets, you're not just going to go into a new market just making money. Oftentimes you have to establish your presence in that market, and you have to be willing to stick it out and grow that market. And, I think a part of that too is just surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. Surround yourself with people that have been there, that have been where you want to go, and be smart enough to listen to them, and be smart enough to take a collection of ideas and pick the best one, even if it's not your idea. And I think one of the toughest ways to stay relevant today is technology. Like I'm not super tech savvy. You have all these forms of social media. It's no different than what we talked about the other day. Like now we're in a content situation. We have like our main show, then we have YouTube that needs content, then we have CG TV that needs content. So you have 3 different forms of, putting your show out there, and each one of those they all have to be fed, And so I think the challenge is now, I think it's evolving, on top of having those things, you have your Facebook, your Twitter, Instagram, but now there's TikTok, Snapchat. How do you utilize those things? Because if you want to hit the younger crowd, Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat are essential. And, I think there's still a lot to be had on those, a lot to figure out.
One thing, I just got back into social media and I shut it down. I wish I never did. But one thing that is, in talking to Brent and Aaron, is that, man, whenever they follow me, I follow them back. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, you made my dad can't believe you follow me back. I guess a lot of people don't do that. And then I'll say, no, thank you for being a fan, supporting. They're like, oh my God, they want that interaction. It's kind of like, so I see that, and then I'm like, well, it's the same thing when I wrestle. Like, the crowd wants to interact. Like, with me as a heel, they want to interact. And I see so many of the wrestlers don't interact with the crowd. It's move after move after move after move after move, and they go right back to A1 Wrestling, and they want to make sure what whoever Joey Styles or whoever Dave Meltzer said about them in their match. I'm like, dude, they're missing everything out there, man. They're missing the work in between. They're missing the interaction of the crowd. And I think that's what could be different today. Is the interaction.
I think you said it perfectly. I think one thing has not changed. They want to feel that connection to you. The thing that's changed is all the different ways that they can get that feeling. It used to be they had to come to the show to get that feeling, and you had to be present. But now it's not like that. There's ways like this. There's the podcast. There's just every form of social media. There's all kinds of different ways for them to get that interaction now. Yeah. And it's a blessing and a curse. It's easier than ever. Used to, when you were promoting, if you had shows, you had to go to these towns and just put your flyers up, and that was it. That was your game.
For the best.
Put a commercial on TV or the radio. But now there's all these different things.
Vince would tell us when we're on TV, he goes, don't look into the camera. Don't look in the camera. And I'm like, and then we're like, you guys don't look into the crowd. Don't interact with the crowd. And Pat Patterson would be like, what do you mean don't interact? You don't talk to the camera. You don't do. He goes, how did you think we got heat back in the days? He's like a strong Canadian French accent. He goes, we mess with the crowd. You got to mess with the crowd to get heat, Vince. What's wrong with you? And but Vince, he was like, don't look into the camera. So Randy Orton pulled me aside. He goes, Charlie, you know who doesn't look into the camera? I go, who? He goes, you. You know why? Because he tells you, and he tells everybody else, you guys are struggling. You know who does look in the camera? Me, Cena, Taker, Shawn Michaels. He goes, Vince never told us, but my dad told me. He goes, look into the camera, connect to the people. But he told me that when I knew I was on my way out, and I'm like, man, I wish I would have. So I tell everybody, you go there, look into the goddamn camera and interact with the crowd. Because that's the difference I've seen with my work lately is interacting, and it makes a difference. And
you cannot have an emotional interaction. I don't care what anybody says. You cannot have an emotional attachment to a wrestling move. You cannot have one. The only way you can have an emotional connection is with that person doing those moves, and it is up to you to establish that connection, because a move will never be sustainable, ever.
And Randy does it so right. He walks really slow to the ring, and he looks at the camera the whole time. And Vince is like, we should hurry up and get that insurance done. He goes, no, Vince, man, I'm getting over, and I'm making you more money getting over. And Vince get pissed, but he's like, he's right. Randy is the I tell all the kids, watch him. He's the master, man. He knows how to do it, the work, the timing. You know, he doesn't do a 450 splash, but he doesn't need to, because he.
Yeah. I mean, look at the biggest draws of all time. You know, they weren't necessarily, most of them were not 5-star workers. And, you know, the ones that, you know, like Stone Cold, he was a 5-star worker when he was stunning Steve, but he wasn't when he was Stone Cold. Well, you know, Hulk Hogan, there's videos of Hulk Hogan working in Japan.
Yeah.
You know, and Hulk Hogan worked well in Japan. But what do you see in the United States? You definitely didn't see that Hulk Hogan.
But he didn't have to here, you know.
Hogan and Muda, that's unbelievable. Hogan and Muda is unbelievable.
Yep.
And, you know, most of the American audience doesn't even know about that.
Yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, you're right.
Hogan's drawn so much criticism over the years for his work. And it's like, you guys don't even get it. I mean, that's the biggest draw of all time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I loved his match. One of my favorite matches of his was probably him and The Rock at WrestleMania 18. And, I mean, they had people just eating out of the palm of their hand.
Yeah.
That is wrestling.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, man.
And the way that crowd flipped Hogan from a heel to a face and vice versa with The Rock. And, I mean, that just showed what level those two were on, because they just went with it. You know, if you had that whole match scripted out like a lot of the matches are now, they wouldn't even been able to recognize that and make that swerve, you know, to go with what the fans wanted, because they've already planned it all out, and they didn't, you know, they couldn't get to that level.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, guys, we talk about all kinds of ways to watch wrestling that the fans do nowadays. We cannot forget about the live event experience. And speaking of the live event experience, December 11th, Star Wars, Christmas Star Wars. Jerry Bostic, what can everybody look forward to at Southern Junction in Irving?
You know, we're really excited to be back in Texas. It's the first time since COVID we've had a show there. We're looking to make a statement. We're looking to, you know, Southern Junction is going to be one of our home venues. The other one will be NYTEX Center in North Richland Hills. And we're looking to show, I think a lot of our shows were good in the past, but they were just spot shows. You know, even the shows that were presented on TV were spot shows. We're looking to set the stage to show that we can produce episodical television and do it in a way that will draw people there every month, and will draw it to view in all areas, whether it be the internet, in person, whatever. There will never be an experience like the live event experience, no matter what company it is. And, you know, we're out to stake our claim as the best in Texas, period.
Well, I'm excited.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry.
And that's not knocking anybody else either. I hope everybody's out there trying to be the best.
Well, you know, I think everybody wants to be the best with their craft. And why not? I mean, you own the promotion and you want it to be the best, so you get the right, the right roster. And I think that's what that says a lot. You know, people want to make sure that they often say they want to do it, but do they actually go out and do it? You know, do they listen to the fans, or do they go against the fans, or do they hire their friends? So,
I think it's important, whether it be wrestling or anything else. Like, if you're going to do something, leave it all on the table.
Yeah.
Don't have regrets. Don't have what ifs. Just do it. Do it the best you can, and it's either going to work or it's not. But at the end of the day, if you're not in it to be the best, what are you in it for?
You're right. Yep. So, yeah.
No, you're exactly right, without a shadow of a doubt. If you anytime you approach anything like this, I perfectly believe that it's like putting a team on the field. Best players go on the field and have the best team possible. When you get all the like-minded individuals that have the same mindset and the same goals that work together, that's when pretty amazing things can happen in this world we live in here. So
yeah, you're exactly right, Aaron. And I think the last time, it was almost like I was trying to play on a team and with a lot of I wasn't surrounding myself with players that could get to where we needed to go. I was trying to just rely on myself and carry the load myself, and you just can't do that. You have to be smart enough to realize that you can't do it all by yourself, and you have to have that team like you just talked about. And I think that's the end game. I think that's how you become the best, is you field a team full of players that are capable of getting you there, not a team full of eyes, because a team full of eyes ain't going to get you shit except lost money.
Well, you know what? And I also say that you got to have the right guys. And you got to sell them like this isn't an independent. This is something different. Because if they treat it like an independent, they're just like, oh, I got to go over here and work there. And they got to buy into it, man. And it's like, and that's what I've learned. Like, man, it could take off, man. It's just like this way. There's more exposure. There's internet TV. There's the self-marketing through social media. Like it gets wheels, man. It's going to go, and it can go. And we've seen it. And, I know you get 100% out of me because I want to leave a place where my kids can come wrestle for. That's what I want.
So Jerry, who can we expect to see at Christmas Star Wars on the 11th of December?
We got Fuego del Sol, Andrew Anderson, Action Jackson, Mick Foley, Danny B, Kelsey Reagan, Moonshine Mantell, Jacob Fatu, Double D, Kyle Hawk, Jenny Santana, which is Tito Santana's daughter, Erica Torres, the Blood Hunter, Carlito, the Farads, the OMGs, Gino Medina, Eric Embry, Kevin Sullivan, Mark Lawrence, and our main man, Charlie Haas.
Yeah. I'm excited, man. I really am. I'm excited because we're going to be in Dallas. It'll be good. It'll be good, man.
I'll be there too, probably.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope.
My kids, I know that.
Just don't cut out in the main event, Jerry.
Hey, if anybody sees me with the briefcase, don't say anything.
So since we've got you here, Jerry, and we've got Charlie Haas here, who is Charlie going to be wrestling that night?
Charlie is going to be working MLW star Gino Medina, who's also one of Booker T's prize students. I expect that to be a hell of a match, possibly match of the night.
I've been doing my homework. He has a mixed style of lucha libre and American, but old school. It's not like Will Allday. He's about as athletic as him, but he actually he has styles a little bit better. I mean, not that Will's bad, but he slows down. So go ahead.
Yeah, Gino's one of my favorites to watch.
Modern day.
Huh?
Do what?
Gino is one of my favorites to watch, and he's extremely talented. I'm really looking forward to seeing him and Charlie mix it up.
Well, I'm doing research because I'm going to go right after. I mean, he likes to fly, man. I'm going to clip that wing.
Clip his wings. Now, Gino's actually a second generation wrestler. His father was a luchador. So he's got wrestling in his blood for sure. He was born into it.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a hell of a match.
So we
get like I said, I think it could easily be match of the night.
Yeah. Oh, I plan on every match.
And hearing Jerry, hearing you run down the list of everybody's going to be there, and knowing, having Charlie versus Gino, without a shadow of a doubt, it's going to be a pretty incredible night. I know we're all looking forward to it. It'd be my first time to see world-class pro wrestling. I'm looking forward to it myself, to join y'all on December 11th for Christmas Star Wars, Southern Junction, a great facility, great people that run that building, and in a town that's really hungry for wrestling and hungry for this type of wrestling. And man, we wish you the best of luck.
Well, thank you guys. Looking forward to seeing you guys there, and of course having Charlie. And I think every show that you produce, you should be out trying to make a statement. And everybody's statement is different. That's one of the things I think that's beautiful about wrestling is, some people, like Robert Langdon. I mean, yeah, his shows may be small, but Robert's ran those how long, or his venues small? And that's commendable. That's a long time to consistently be running shows. You got people like Booker T doing his thing down there, and you guys at Dog Pound. I think, between World Class and Dog Pound, I think we tried to salvage, parts of SWE, which, SWE was, it did a lot of great things in its short run. There's MPX, where Brent's currently doing some stuff. I mean, that to me, all of those promotions mentioned are commendable. I think MPX weekly shows for I don't know how long, a long time. Like, man, that's not easy. Whenever we had our stint in Carrollton that was cut short by COVID, I was like, damn, man, these weekly wrestling shows, damn. And so, hats off to Stephen Kirby and his team for doing that. I think that's very cool. There's just a lot of good wrestling right now in Texas. It's amazing.
And that's something like you said. I want to say this while we're out here, but I'm trying something new too. I call it the world's greatest tag session. And right now I go into spaces on down there on Twitter. I'm doing that once a month, where all the tag teams throughout the world will meet. We'll break down different parts of the psychology of what's going on in their part of the world when it comes to tag team wrestling. And then individually, I've had one tag team reach out, and other tag teams are scheduling to where they'll do a Zoom call with me. We'll watch one of their matches, break it down, and we'll correct it and put the right psychology in place and see it and go from there. So I'm doing that. And Arn Anderson gave me his stamp of approval. So as I start the end of my career, but I still feel like I got another 3 or 4 years in me. I definitely am working on the other side. So I started as a tag team specialist, and I want to see tag teams wrestling come back to where it was.
I think that's great. I think it's great you bring that up. You're trying to establish things on the other side. And I think that being in the wrestling business, if you're a wrestler, I think it is smart to learn as much as you can, because, your in-ring career is only going to last so long. Your body only has so many bumps, but that doesn't mean that your wrestling career has to be short. It just means, I believe that if anybody really loves wrestling, there's always a seat on the bus for you. It might not necessarily be the seat you want, but if you're smart enough to adapt, then you can change seats on the bus as your career, goes longer and longer. And I think it's wonderful you're learning those things. I think it's wonderful you're doing the tag team thing too. I think, you think the best tag teams of all time, and most of my favorite tag teams were 80s and 90s teams. Now, I almost feel like now people are just put together and they're called a tag team oftentimes. Nothing against the one that popped just right in my head, Randy Orton and Matt Riddle. They're cool together, but are they a real tag team? Not to me, they're not. They're not, you and Shelton. They're not the Hart Foundation. They're not Demolition. They're not the Rock and Roll Express, the Steiners, Road Warriors. They're not that type of team to me.
I think the formula with that idea is put them together just so we can break them up in 3 or 4 months.
Well, and Vince is like, it's all about money. And if they got 2 big names making money, but they're not doing anything, let's put them in a tag team like Edge and Ray, and just do it. It's a money thing, really. And I know Vince hates tag team wrestling because he thinks of it as an added expense. That's why he's really it's gone downhill with and I think Shelton and I, we caught the very end of it with the Guerreros and then Rhino and Benoit, which wasn't really a tag team anyways, but we were on the way out of that ruthless aggression tag team era where you had the Hardys, because at one time we were on SmackDown and the Dudleys were on Raw. We wanted to wrestle them, but world's greatest tag team against today's greatest multi-time tag team champions. It never worked out, but we never did. But you're right though. All the tag teams today, I say the heels try to out wrestle the baby faces. They want to outshine them with all their tag team moves. The greatest tag team, I think, is Arn and Tully. You know what? I can't name one double tag team move they ever did.
Yeah, I think just the business has evolved so much, and not necessarily all good ways. You know, I mean, you even think about like what is a heel now compared to a heel then? Two totally different things.
Totally two different. Yeah, I know. They wrestle for the pop, and it's got to, you know, and it's like, we'll see, man. We'll see how, you know, I'll tell you that the kids, like I go up my kids. They were watching a match with Ricochet and Will Ospreay. Great athletes, great performers, and all of a sudden they're watching, like, oh, that's cool, and they disappeared. I'm like, guys, you gonna watch this? Nah, man, we're good. So nothing caught them. It wasn't like they saw the moves. And believe me, Russ and Chuck are in the ring wrestling, and they're wrestling amateur, but I'm teaching them pro, and they're just like, no, Dad, that's good. We know the moves, but they weren't there. They don't want to sit and watch. They don't watch the rest of the show. Who's next? You know, it's that was something when I was a kid I always wanted. So I judge by the young kids, man, and that's the one that told me. I'm like, hey, how's his punches? He looks terrible. That kicks are terrible. Like Russ goes, is wrestling real or fake? I go, it's real. Why? He goes, because I punch better than half the guys on that crew. I'm like, okay.
Well, you know, I remember watching that match too. If it was the one where they were like match of the year or whatever, and I didn't make it like 5 minutes into that match. And I'm not knocking those guys because they can do stuff I couldn't do on my best day. But at the same time, like, you know, it's like we talked on the phone earlier, and you brought up comparing it to Cirque du Soleil. And that's exactly what, to me, a lot of the wrestling that we see now is. It's more relatable to Cirque du Soleil. And I'm not knocking Cirque du Soleil. I like Cirque du Soleil. But, you know, it's just a totally different thing than, you know, what we were used to seeing at one point. And in a lot of ways, you know, to establish a real alternative to WWE, that's where it has to go back.
You know, the issue with those series of matches with Ospreay and Ricochet was there was never any drama behind it. It was just them.
There was more than one
they could do. Yeah, there was more than one. They've done it several times.
Oh, but thank God I missed them.
It's
memorize all those moves. Jeez.
Well, yeah, it's just that's all they're doing is regurgitating what they talked about in the back. And
you can't tell me the first few minutes of that match when they're having all these counters and they're coming up with the same the same ideas, and then they both pop up at the same time. Like, that doesn't make sense.
It makes it look fake.
It's almost like a video game fight.
Yeah. And it's cool, and I can appreciate the athleticism and
me too,
and what they're doing, but I'm not invested in it. I don't like. Okay, cool. It's like Charlie just said. Russ, like, oh, we don't care now. But like, I'm the same way. Like they did nothing to entice me to watch other than all these cool flips, and that's really cool. It's really cool. I was blown away by some of the stuff they did, but what was the point?
What is going to make you, and I think that's the question you have to ask yourself about episodical television. What about that is going to make you want to watch it again? You've already seen it.
Seen all of it.
No storyline. There's no purpose. What brings you back to that? To me, nothing. And like I said, I'm not knocking them either. You know, everybody to each their own. Everybody's entitled to like what they want. But, you know, to me, it's just dead end storytelling.
Yeah. Well, and then what they don't do now is, man, there's something they should do, and I wish I would have done this, but Aaron really got me, is the analytics. You got to look at when you're on TV or you're on internet TV, the analytics, like where's the ratings at? Do people turn the channel or do they stay there? And there's a number of what you're at. So I've gone over mine when I was with SW. Man, if I was in the 95 percentile above, then I'm doing something wrong. And I wanted to be better than everyone else on there. No one else would look at it. They just wanted to do their stuff. And I'm like, man, there's more to it, you know? So how do I interact with the crowd to get that rating high? And and if I'm not doing my job and I'm putting asses in seats when I'm the champ, then that's a problem. I gotta correct that. So it's so much more to do than just the moves. It's the work in between, and it's the work outside the ring to stay where if you become the champion, you got to stay there and you want to know how. You got to learn, you know. So.
Yeah, my challenge to everybody like that has this cool collection of moves is, how do you tell the story of how do you get from one move to the other?
Yeah.
How do you take the time to do that in the proper speed, you know, not too fast, not too slow, to where you give people time to take it all in? How do you do that? And if you can do all of that, then you're doing one hell of a job.
Yeah, remember, if you're going too slow, it's the right speed. That's what Arn Anderson would tell me. So,
well, guys,
you have to give people time to take it in.
Yeah, you have to. They have to digest it. So, go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Oh, you're good. Jerry, just want to thank you once again for being with us here tonight. Thanks for joining me in the garage here, but joining us here at the Haas Pod, Wrestling's greatest podcast.
The Tool Man.
We look forward to, the Tool Man. We look forward to December 11th for Christmas Star Wars with World Class Pro Wrestling. Most definitely the hottest ticket in town. Check them out at Southern Junction in Irving. And Brent, you have anything?
Jerry, where can we find you on social media? Where do we need to look for World Class?
You can find World Class at World Class Rev on Twitter and Instagram, World Class Pro Wrestling on the Facebook, worldclassprowrestling.com for event tickets to Christmas Star Wars and every other event. And you can find me on social media here and there. I don't know any of the tags. But thank you guys very much for having me. Feel blessed and honored to share that time with you guys tonight. And, I look forward to having Charlie debut in December and, doing a lot of special things together.
Well, I tell you this, Jerry, we will be there on December 11th, all three of us. Aaron and I will be suited up, suits and ties, and we'll be there representing the Haas Pod, the Wrestling's Greatest Podcast, and looking forward to a great show, man. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, man. I appreciate this, and thanks for the insight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
You guys, remember hashtag Jericho Fears Haas. Take care.
Hashtag Jericho Fears Haas. Hashtag the Haas Pod. Hashtag Haas Hole Nation. You can see Charlie there. He's the #1 Haas Hole, and he's the leader of the Haas Hole Nation.
Yeah.
And so you can find us on Twitter at the Haas Pod, on Facebook at Wrestling's Greatest Podcast, and then coming soon is an Instagram at the Haas Pod. Aaron, let's go ahead and wrap this thing up and take it home.
Once again, all the thanks in the world to Jerry Bostic, and looking forward to an incredible event at Southern Junction in Irving on December 11th for Christmas Star Wars. Thank you to Jerry Bostic. Thank you to Charlie Haas. Thank you to SuperTex Brent McKenzie. On behalf of all of them, I'm Aaron Presley, and we will see you next time right here at the Haas Pod, right here at Wrestling's Greatest Podcast.